What's up, everyone? Welcome to Unmasked, where things are discovered, uncovered, brought to the light, and made known. I'm your host, Lamar Barrett, coming live to you from PG County, Maryland. If you're interested in finding out about the untold stories behind being a college coach, this is the show for you. Being a former assistant men's college basketball coach for 16 years, there are so many untold stories behind the scenes in the life of a college basketball coach. Now, let's unmask them. Today's guest is a young and bright assistant coach with a great basketball mind, an excellent talent evaluator, a future head coach in his business in my eyes, and a native of Allentown, Pennsylvania, Cal Griffin. Now, Cal is a former player, started off at Lasalle, finished his career at Siena College, graduated in 2011. He's a former hoop grouper, and like myself, he was in charge of team tournaments, where he did a great job there for a couple of years for Rob Kennedy at the hoop group before going on to Lehigh University, where he spent three years with the Dr. Brett Reed, who's a tremendous coach at Lehigh University. And then from there, he went to work with, and I always say work with Andy Tu at Robert Morris University for 2 seasons as an assistant coach. And then now presently he's at Lasalle University, where he's an assistant coach for the last couple of years, going to go on year 3. They're building that program around. He's working with Ashley Howard. So, like I said, a young and bright assistant coach in his business is a bright future. I think he's going to be a head coach in my eyes. Just want to say welcome to the show, Cal.
Thanks, Lamar, man. I really appreciate you having me on here. I'm excited to do this.
Well, look, man, we're going to get right to it, man. Let's go ahead and get unmasked. And you kind of, you were going from player to now going to the hoop group. And so, I mean, that was an experience probably within itself, but it teaches you a lot. It gives you a lot of connections. But then you go into college coaching. Like, there's no handbook to being a college coach. Tell me about your first day, the first week, first month, or after things are done with human resources and orientation, like, especially when no one gives you direction. Tell me what that was like, man, when you leave the hoop group and you go right into college coaching.
To be honest with you, I thought that my transition from being a college player to the hoop group was a much more difficult transition than going from the hoop group to Lehigh. I'll say going from the hoop group to Lehigh, I mean, the one things that I already had was the work ethic. Like, the one thing Rob Kennedy is going to make you do at the hoop group is work and learn how to work. And so once you have that, I mean, that's half the battle in this college basketball game. The other thing was just all the connections you make and the relationships you make working at the hoop group. So I would say immediately as soon as I joined the staff at Lehigh, obviously I was trying to develop relationships with our own team. But also I just was in there trying to make stuff happen, get involved with recruits that we weren't involved with, figure out how to get things done, figure out how to get guys in the gym. And I was young at the time. I think I was 24, 25 years old when I first got to Lehigh. And so staying in the gym late at night, getting up early in the morning, that was nothing for me. And I was pretty close to those guys in age. So I was still getting out there with them, playing them one-on-one, and trying to beat those dudes up a little bit. So that was transition wasn't too tough.
That's good to hear, man. Yeah, I know horror stories a lot of times, so good for you. Recruiting, man, we all know that's the lifeline of college athletics. Got to get good players, got to get good people. In your situation, you had to get kids that were very good basketball players that happen to be good students. I mean, those are the guys you're going to win with a lot of times. Players that are good at basketball that just happen to be good students. Because sometimes, there are kids who are very good students that just like to play basketball. But in your eyes, in a program like Lehigh, I know, you're always going to look for the best basketball player that just happen to have grades. But then you go, Robert Morris and on to LaSalle now. But talk about your best and worst recruiting story, man, over the years. Like, I've been on the road with you a lot, and I've seen you some, but, like, Talk about your best and worst recruiting story.
The best recruiting story, I can think of the worst one. The worst, I was actually in the gym with you on the worst one. But actually, here's the best. Got to guarantee. Okay, I was at Robert Morris. And I was recruiting in North Jersey. There was an event at Keene University, and there were a bunch of games. And the games were supposed to end, I want to say, at like 9 o'clock that night. And I was driving back to Robert Morris. So from Keene to Robert Morris, it's probably 6.5 hours or so. And I had the scout for the next game. This was during the season. So I had to be back on campus by 11 a.m. the next morning. So I figure, okay, I'm going to drive an hour and a half to get to my parents' house, actually, which was on the way going towards Pittsburgh. I'll get an hour and a half out of the way tonight, get there around 11 p.m. And then I'll have to wake up at like 5:30 and hit the road and go right to campus. And I figure, okay, I'll get back by 11 a.m. and be ready for my scout presentation with Coach Toole. Unfortunately, the games were running late, as they often do in the event, in the high school event. And so that the last game, and I was there to see a kid in the last game. Last game wasn't ending until like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna have to drive back, and I'm literally only going to be able to sleep for 2-3 hours and have to hit the road again. So I see our guy Kevin Sutton at the game, and he was at Pitt at the time, and I'm up the street at Robert Morris, and I'm messing with him. I said, "Yo, you want to let me on a private jet on the way back?" See what he said, like just messing around. I'm like, "Yeah, I got to drive back tonight. This is brutal." And he looks at me and he goes, "Yo, honestly, we might be able to let you on there." So I'm like, "Oh, shoot, let me see what I can do." He said, "You got to talk to the boss," and Coach Stallings was sitting there in the front row. He's like, "You got to talk to the boss, but we might be able to make something work." So long story short, I end up talking to Coach Stallings. He's like, "As long as I can figure it out, make sure it's not an insurance liability or whatever, you can come on." And I had to drop my rental car, figure out where I was going to drop my rental car off and all that, whatever, meet up with them at the private airport, and hopped on a private jet with those two guys on the way back to Pittsburgh. Made it back by like 12:30, up in the morning, right in the office. So I ended up, that was the best. The worst, me and you were in the gym in Chicago, in Illinois, outside of Chicago, to go see the kid Tavion Kirk. And from Pittsburgh, it's like a, I don't know, 5.5, 6 hour drive maybe. And so, but on the way there, you gain an hour, I guess. And then on the way back, you lose an hour. And so I didn't take that hour, losing an hour on the way back, into account. And so I'm driving, and I was probably on the road for 3-4 hours, and then midnight hit or 1 a.m. hit, and then boom, I lose an hour. And I'm like, "Yo, shoot, it's rather than 1 a.m., it's 2 a.m. And now I got to find out where can I sleep at." And I just remember that was the first cup of coffee I've ever had in my life, where I actually went to the store, bought a cup of coffee for myself to try to wake myself up and continue driving. That was probably the worst.
Yeah, I can remember that. I actually remember that vividly. That the Tavion Kirk story. I remember that. I think Ronnie Hamilton might have been in the gym, and it was. I remember that game. I definitely remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that. Like we all know this, man. You knew, from working with the hoop group, how things go. Like you talked about with Rob, but now you get into college coaching. You were a player. Now you're on the coaching side. And there's a lot of time that you invest in this. If you want to be great at your craft, we all know that. And the reason why I say that is, like, what did you have to give up or sacrifice, achieving your current level of success?
I mean, depends. I mean, it really depends on how you look at it. Like, for me personally, I love doing this. And I think a lot of people think it's just a lot of, like, so much time spent on this job, and they wish they could have more balance in their life or whatever. And but honestly, for me personally, I think that, like, I would be doing something like this regardless of whether I was a college basketball coach or not. And so I will say, like, I'm still not married. I'm engaged. Not getting married till next summer. No kids. So, like, I haven't been through any of that stuff, and I have no idea how that's going to play into this. But as of right now, I'm just living my life, man. I love doing what I do, and luckily my fiance is on board with how I want to do things and how I want to work and go about my business. And we got a good little partnership that way. And then down the line, if we decide to throw kids into the mix, that may change that up a little bit. So we'll see. Until then, I'm doing what I love to do. Haven't really had to sacrifice too much.
I like that, and I forget, like, yeah, you when you're not married, you don't have that changes the whole lot. Because when you're single,
Yeah.
I mean, and you have someone that understands, so that's a plus as well. Because, and you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna check back with you in 2 years from now, and
Yeah.
see how that's going. But
Yep.
now, as long as she understands now, that's perfect. Like, she knows what she's getting herself into. It's not like you were doing this, you met her. Like, it's so she understands going in. That's the biggest thing. That's how it was with my wife as well. Scouting reports, man. We know that those are key, and you talked about that early, like having to get back and meet with Coach Toole. But it's how much time, man, did you put in the scouts? Guys people don't understand. Like, it's 7, 8, games, or sometimes 9 or 10. You're trying to make sure that scout report is as perfect as you can get, so you can prepare your kids to get wins. You want to try to make it as simple for them so they can understand. But then it's time, man. You got the actions, you got the play calls, and then some kids just go out and you wonder, like, why don't they perform at their best? I mean, they're kids. Sometimes there might be a guy who gets hurt, and there's a guy who replaces him who hasn't played that much, and he hasn't made a lot of shots. Then all of a sudden he gets into the game. He's 2 for his last 30. And then this is a guy that decides to make 3 or 4 threes in a game.
No
and coach is turning around looking at you saying, I thought he couldn't shoot it, or who is this kid? And you're sitting there like, Coach, I told you, I didn't say he couldn't shoot. I just said he's struggling shooting. So talk about your best and worst scout report over the years. And it doesn't have to be per game per se, but let's talk about that, your best and worst scouting report.
I think that, like, first of all, scouting is just so, it's unpredictable, I guess you could say, because you can prepare and prepare and prepare, and to the point where you're so prepared that you are constantly thinking about, okay, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? What are they going to do next? What are they going to do in this situation? And sometimes that takes your mind off of, like, what are we going to do? Don't worry about what the other team is doing all the time. What are we going to do to make sure that we beat this team? And so sometimes, like, luckily I've worked for 3 really good bosses in college basketball, and they've all had their different styles of how they do scouting reports. And so I've learned a lot from that. But I think you just got to be as prepared as possible, and then deliver the messaging to your players as best as you possibly can. And then know, like you said, some kid could come into a game, and it happened to us multiple times this year. Come into a game, he hit 1 3-point shot all season, and against us he made 2, and he only attempted 4 on the whole season. And now he's 50% shooter because he went 2 for 2 against you. My best scout ever was probably, I mean, my most exciting scout ever was my first scouting win. And I remember it was at Lehigh. I was trying to learn how to use the software and all that stuff. And I remember just starting it like 2 months before my first game to try to make sure I was as prepared as possible. And we ended up beating a good Rider team at home. We had a young Lehigh team. We played really well. We knew everything they were doing, felt really prepared. And so that was probably the most exciting scout that I've had. Worst may have been maybe this year at Davidson. I think that we scouted their motion offense really hard, and we talked about a game plan for how to beat it. And I had the scout the year before, and we beat it. And we beat them at home in a really good win. And then I had the scout again this year, and we just had a younger team. Guys weren't as able to dial into I guess personnel and communicating on how we wanted to guard their actions and stuff at their pace. And we ended up having a bad loss down at Davidson this year. When, like I said, the year before, we had a similar game plan, just a little bit more experience, and we were able to beat them.
Yeah, his offense is interesting. I mean, it's actually really good, and I had a chance to see them a couple of times this year. And I caught them early when they played Auburn early, and they weren't good, and then I caught them later on in the year when they were playing like VCU and someone else when they were actually playing really well. So I saw them
really well late in the year. Yep.
Yeah. And you've been in 7 years, man, coaching now. He was, like I said, the hoop group as well, but I don't know if you have, but maybe you have. Like, what's the biggest challenge, man, you've experienced since you've been in college coaching?
I think my biggest challenge has been when kids that I become really close to have like bad injuries. And I think that it's really just hard to keep those kids tough during those moments. One example, we had a kid at Robert Morris who I worked my butt off to recruit him. He was a junior college kid from Northwest Florida State. They were the #1 team in the country that year. They made a deep run in the national tournament. And we were expecting him to be really good for us that following season as a junior. And all preseason, he was playing great. The previous year, we didn't have a forward on our team that could do what he was doing, and we were expecting a lot out of him. And we thought we were really going to be good. We were going to have a really good team. And as we went through kind of some of the preseason, some of the non-conference, his legs would just tighten up, and we didn't know what was going on. We thought he was being we just didn't know. We had him continually get checked out by our trainer and doctors, and they didn't necessarily couldn't get a real read. I was trying to help him get loose and stretch and do all this stuff to help him, and he ended up having blood clots in his legs and wasn't able to play. And thank God he ended up being cleared for his senior year. It was the year after I left for Lasalle, and he had a successful senior year at Robert Morris. But it's just tough, man, when you build a relationship with the kid. We put so much time into recruiting this kid and building a relationship, and we beat out a few schools who were higher level schools than us, and we knew this kid would be really successful if he were to come and remain healthy. And then for him to go through those health challenges and not necessarily to basically receive that level of success that we knew he would get. That was hard to see him go through that and to help him manage that. So I think those are the type of things that are always really challenging. We had a kid on our team this year named Jack Clark, and he tore his ACL going into his freshman year, and then re-tore it again. And like just seeing that stuff is really hard. So I think more so than like so much time put in or brutal travel or anything, seeing when these kids are having a tough time, especially due to injuries or something that's somewhat out of their control, it's really challenging to go through, I think.
Yeah, I feel you on that. You definitely right about that, especially the amount of time you invest in them and things like that. And then to see them go through those tough injuries, man. Like, and I've said this all the time. I think you got a bright future as being a head coach in this business. You're all about your business. You come in. I seem like we lived in Chicago one summer. I mean, if it wasn't in one place, it was in another.
Yeah.
Guys, it's crazy. I thought about that when you said that. Lavelle Jordan, head coach, but he asked me was I from Chicago. I was in Chicago so much one year just recruiting. But I've been in the building with you. You come in, you're all about you work. It's not a whole lot of talking. You come in and do your job. And I was just wondering, do you ever find that there are things about you that people might misunderstand? Like, what are they?
For sure, absolutely. You know what I think, Lamar? Like you said, I'm very much about our program and doing whatever I can to help our kids and our program and my boss. And so I think that sometimes like people may perceive me if they see me at a recruiting event and I drove 3 hours to get there, and now I want to lock in. Like I need to lock in. I'm going to keep stats on the kid or the kids that I'm watching. I'm going to take notes as I'm watching the game. I'm going to watch what their parents are doing as the game is going on. I'm going to watch what they're doing in the huddle. I'm going to really evaluate everything about this human being at the best of my ability while I'm there. And that could be at a high school game or that could be at an AAU tournament. And I think sometimes I come off, and I know I do, where like I might see somebody I know well, and I'll say what's up, but I'm not like super friendly. I'm not checking in on them. I'm not seeing how their family's doing or seeing how they've been and all that stuff because I'm there to work. And so sometimes I think that I don't always come off the right way, or it might come off like I think I'm too good or being arrogant or something. But in all honesty, I'm just trying to work and trying to do my job at the best level that I can. And then I would love to catch up and hang out whenever we get free time. But that's kind of, I would say if anything, that would be that. I'll also say this. I know as a player, when I was growing up, I was a white kid coming up in the Philadelphia area and a guard. And I wasn't a skilled forward or anything like that. So like if I didn't have the mindset where I was trying to win, like I was trying to compete and win, people were going to try to take advantage of me. And honestly, Lonnie Lowry helped me kind of understand that and almost develop that mindset when he was coaching me in AAU back in high school, and that kind of I've brought that with me throughout my career. I didn't have a great college career because I was very injury prone, and I only played in probably a quarter of the games that I was eligible for because of injuries. But that mindset has never really left, and so I think part of that is why I'm successful. So I don't necessarily feel the need to apologize for it, but I do understand how I can be misunderstood at times.
Well, I say you shouldn't apologize. I know you, so like I've
Right.
sat with you. I mean, I'm not one of them like that. And I think when people, when they don't know, like you said, they may read it that way. I've never read it that way. Well, I've never had, we've always known each other, so we go back. That's
Right.
a little different. But I'm glad you said that, and I hope people understand. No, you're not. You're not that way. You come to do your job, and after that, if I had time to communicate or talk with you, then I do it. So I understand it. Trust me, I do understand that. Like you said, you've had some good guys. You mentioned Lonnie Lowry. I mean, you've been with some, you've been around some good teachers at Germantown Academy. So you've had some great guys to be around, and so now it's your turn to teach. It's your time to educate. We know you're great on the basketball floor. Like, but what do you try to teach your players besides basketball? What do you teach them?
There's a lot of things, like, I mean, at the end of the day, I want them to understand how to conduct themselves in life on a daily basis. And not only on the basketball court, but the basketball court teaches you a lot about adversity and how to react, how to use your brain and be smart and rational in your decision making, and not be emotional. I mean, in school, being able to push yourself and understand why it's important to push yourself academically as it is in your sport. And even if you don't necessarily like it, there's so many things that you can gain and you can learn from every experience. And I think when we were all young, we took a lot of that stuff for granted, and we didn't make the most out of every situation. So just trying to help our kids learn from every experience they go through. If they don't do well on a test, help them understand why they didn't do well. If their teacher gave them a bad grade, they didn't agree with what the teacher did, or the teacher misunderstood something they did, or didn't receive an email with a homework assignment or whatever. How do you confront that teacher and address the situation with them, and not tell them that they're crazy for messing with you like that? So I just think all that stuff is really important. Just trying to help them all act as mature grown men, and be responsible and be true to their word, and understand the importance of that and their integrity. So I would say that. Now on the basketball court, I like to be out there with them, so they don't always feel like I'm just preaching to them, telling them, yo, do this, do this, do this, do this. And in reality, I can't do it, or so how am I supposed to show them and really help them understand what they're supposed to do? And so I try to keep myself in shape to the best of my ability, and get out there with them and do drills, and teach them how to do it, and break a sweat every day in practice with them, and run up and down the floor in practice as they're running up and down the floor. So like they can feel my excitement and my energy. And I think through that, it gives them energy, and helps them fight through some of the difficult times that they go through, whether that's a lull like in the middle of the season where they're hitting a funk, or their body's starting to get tired on them. And we as coaches have to bring the same energy every day. So that's how I like to coach on the basketball court. But empowering these young kids to understand that they can do whatever they want to do in their life, and helping them understand how to learn from their experiences and deal with the adversity that hits them. I think that's really important, and something we as a staff at Lasalle, we try to help them with on a daily basis.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I definitely like that. What are your best and worst memories in coaching?
Worst memory is losing the Patriot League championship my last year at Lehigh. We had sold out arena at Stabler Arena, and we were the I think we were the 2 seed in the tournament, and Bucknell had gotten upset, and you know, we had built with this group of guys. I got to Lehigh the year after C.J. McCollum graduated, and so it was a rebuild, man. We needed to bring new, good players in. We had to develop them, and we had to turn the program back around. And we finally, like after our 3rd year, we got to that point where we turned that program around, and we get upset in the championship game and lose by 3 in front of a packed arena, and it just, like, it breaks your heart for those kids. So that was the toughest game. The best game that we've been a part of in coaching, we won a big game at Arizona State when I was at Lehigh. It was really cool. One of our best players, Tim Kempton, is from Arizona. We brought him back home, and he got to win in front of his family at Arizona State. That was really fun. We won at DePaul when I was at Lehigh as well. We won the Gulf Coast Challenge Championship this year at Lasalle in the preseason, the tournament for really good mid-major programs, Murray State, Northeastern, just some really, really good mid-majors. We beat South Alabama in the championship, who was a good program. And that was at LaSalle, that was the most exciting thing, because those guys really came together for that event. We played 3 games in 3 days. Going through those scouts, that was really difficult. And I had our first round game and the championship game, so I was scrambling to get those done. But that was really really exciting. I will say one of the hardest things to do in this business, and one of the hardest things I've been through in coaching is every time I have to tell my players that I'm going to take a new job. I think that is really difficult to do, because you develop a bond with these kids and they look to you for support in all aspects of their life, and you really get to know them. And then to tell them that you are leaving them, it's hard. You don't want them to feel like you're completely abandoning them. And it's funny, like I've stayed in touch with a lot of the kids, every kid I've ever recruited, and even more kids that I've worked with on a daily basis from Lehigh to Robert Morris, and now even the kids who have graduated from LaSalle. So that's always challenging, but I think the nice thing is when a Karan Ross from Lehigh, who was all-time leading assist man at Lehigh history, and me and him used to watch one-on-one every one of his games to see more opportunities that he could find to make plays, and just different areas where he could be aggressive, and then for him to continue to stay in contact and reach out and let you know how he's doing, stuff like that. That stuff is really, really cool. I saw a couple of our kids from Lehigh at the Final Four, not this past year, obviously, but the year before, and just like catching up with them, bonding with them. That stuff is really cool, man.
No, definitely, you're 100% right on that. By the way, the arena at Florida Gulf Coast, it's still freezing in there. I just remember, like,
I can't. Honestly, I can't remember. I want to say it was freezing. I forget what the name of the arena was.
We definitely played at that same event. We ended up, we lost to Vermont. But I remember we played. I just remember we played. I want to say it might have been Bradley, Vermont. I forgot who the third game was, and like it was freezing in that arena. I just remember that. I
can't remember. I want to say maybe like the first night it was freezing, and then like after that they calmed it down in there a little bit.
But I definitely know what you're talking about. The Florida Gulf Showcase. I know that one pretty well. and I like to change this up a little bit. You've been in it for 7 years. I don't know if you've seen it. Maybe you have. Like, what's the strangest, weirdest, wildest thing you might have seen from a player that they've done outside of the basketball court? Just something like, you don't have to say no names, but it's like, wow, I can't believe this dude really did this. Like, something you probably, like, as a player probably wouldn't have thought of, but they just do something weird. And you're like, wow. Oh, you know what now? Tony did give me a story, so.
He didn't give you anything? Oh, man.
Oh, Tony gave me a story. He gave me one. So it may be the same one if you it could be the same one, but I don't know. But I just know Tone had a strange one from Lehigh. That's all I'm gonna say.
He was there. I mean, he was there longer than I was. There was one. I know there was one from his time at Lehigh that I know that was I wasn't there for it, but that was brutal that they had to go through it. What is a story? I can't think of one off the top of my head.
We can come back to that.
I'll say this. There was a kid. There was a kid at Lehigh, and then one day he came to practice and his face was all beat up, busted up, and we tried to ask him what happened, what's going on, and obviously he acted like nothing was wrong, nothing. But he got in a fight the night before, and we ended up finding out, and then he wanted to just accept, like, after that night, and he got his face beat in, just not crazy, but enough where it was noticeable. And the next day he kind of wanted to ramp it up after practice. And we thought he was going to have a couple guys come to the hotel in Bethlehem and from his hometown and do all this stuff. And so we're like standing guard, like, yo, don't let this happen, man. But that was, you know how kids can get a little defensive if they get in a fight. So that was one. That was one that was a little bit off the cuff, not necessarily in your normal job description.
Definitely not. Not when you're showing up with your face beaten. That's definitely not. And I'm gonna ask you this. This is a little different. And I like to ask this, like, because you've worked, you said you work with some good guys, and I know, you're a guy, you're a student of the game. But, like, if you had a chance to sit down with some guys now in this business, you, like you said, work for Ashley, work for Dr. Reed, work for Andy. Have you had a chance to sit down with some guys who want to pick their brain just to see what their thoughts were as head coaches, just to put you in that same mindset, like a young coach looking to grow? What happens? I get my program, or just sit down, three guys that you just sit down and have lunch with or dinner with and figure out how to pick their brain. Who would guys be in this business you like just want to sit down for an hour or so, a couple hours, have lunch or dinner with, and just talk hoops and pick their brain?
Now, first of all, you know how this business is, Lamar. You'll ask to pick somebody's brain. They won't give you anything what they're actually doing, because they're going to keep their secrets on how they do things. But if I could pick somebody's brain and really find out how they operated on a daily basis to have the success that they do and did, I would probably say Brad Stevens, number one. I would say Billy Donovan, I think, because he's done it at both levels, just like Coach Stevens. And then honestly, probably Jay Wright, because, I have my perspective working with Coach Ash here at Lasalle, being at Villanova for his 5 years, and I'm obviously working with him, trying to build a culture like they had at Villanova when they won their 2 national championships. And and I would love to just continue to learn more about how Coach Ash wants things done every day, and just if I could have more experience and just a clearer vision on what that looks like, we could probably be more successful here at LaSalle. Also, it's just continuing to learn how to make our program the best we possibly could. Now we're both in the Big Five, so I know that's not happening. But,
those are 3 great names, though. I mean, I would love to sit down with those guys. Those are 3 terrific names. And you talked about this. You talked about it's a short stint, but like people still their accomplishments are different in different ways. But what do you think the biggest accomplishment you've experienced since you become a college coach? It's not all about wins a lot of times with accomplishment. But anything that you might have experienced since you become a college coach that was a huge accomplishment to you?
I mean, to be honest with you, my biggest accomplishments are probably like recruiting, like winning recruiting battles. And I haven't been, unfortunately, I haven't been at one place long enough to kind of reap the benefits of some of the groundwork that we laid at each spot. For example, at Lehigh, when I got there, it was a complete rebuilding process, and I think we finished in 6th or 7th the first year. I want to say 6th. First year I was there, and then the second year finished in 3rd, and then the 3rd year finished in 2nd. But even those couple of years after I left, the framework was already developed and established. So they had success for another couple of years because of the players we were able to bring in and kind of the identity and the culture we were able to instill with that new group. And so even though I was at Robert Morris watching Lehigh have success, that it just makes me feel good about what we were able to do at Lehigh. Then I go to Robert Morris, and I get to Robert Morris kind of right in the midst of the whole transfer up deal, and Coach Toole just was unfortunate in having a few kids decide to transfer to higher level schools. Marquise Reed, Rodney Pryor, and he had some really talented players. And honestly, they weren't talented as high school players or junior college players, but when they get to Robert Morris, Coach Toole does an unbelievable job developing guys, and he kind of developed them, and then they decided to leave and transfer to higher level schools for increased exposure. And I helped recruit and develop the team as we were continuing to as we were rebuilding the program at Robert Morris. And this past year, Robert Morris just won the NEC championship with a lot of the guys that we had brought in when I was there, and that I had worked with every day, and just that's good to see that the programs that I was a part of, that they become successful, even if it's not while I'm there, they become successful because some of the groundwork we laid while I was there. And now at LaSalle, we're going through the same process, and I don't think that we've necessarily seen the success that we want to, but I do think that we are in the process of laying the groundwork and building this program the right way, and hopefully we'll be able to see some of that in the next couple of years.
I'm definitely sure you guys will, man. Just to throw you off a little bit, because I know you are locked in, focused basketball guy, but you might take some time sometime. Like, what movie or TV show title best describes your week?
My week? Wow. You guys stumped me on this one. I gotta think about this one. TV show title. I can talk about some TV shows I've been watching through this COVID situation, but
that's what most people do. That's the answer. That's the way they can go out, because they go off the pandemic. I watch more TV now, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know what TV show title it would describe. I will say I just finished watching this show called Kingdom on Netflix. It's like a fighting show. It was cool. Buddy of mine, it lives in Venice Beach right now, and the show takes place in Venice and in California, and just to kind of see some of the inner workings of like UFC type fighting, and the competitiveness and the drive and the emotions that go into all of that. It's that was a good show. It was good. I hadn't seen that before.
That's you, right? Competitive, the drive, the fight. that could be right there.
Yeah, I mean, those guys, like, yeah, I'll say that. Then they got to be locked in. They got to be locked in. There's no question about that.
There you go. They got
to be locked in when they're getting ready for a fight.
Like, what's your favorite word or phrase, man, you think you use a lot? Especially, like, it could be in life, it could be around the players, and they, like, the players know it's coming. You in practice, could be something you just say.
I honestly don't think I'm a big, like, catchphrase guy. One of the phrases that that Coach Ash brought to our program at Lasalle was "be legit," and I think that there's so many people out here, whether it's in our business or just in the world in general, that aren't legit. They talk all this game. They can talk for days, for hours about what they're gonna do, how they're gonna do it, this and that, and all this stuff, and they don't get it done. Like I wouldn't say I'm a big talker or catchphrase guy or that kind of thing. I just but I am, you can ask anybody who I've worked with or any of my former players that I've coached, I am 100% true to my word. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm doing it. Or if I'm not able to do it, I'm going to let them know before I can't do it and figure something else out to make it work. But I, like, if I was going to say one thing, I would say be legit. I really like that from Coach Ash.
I like that. I definitely like that myself. Kyle, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Figure it the F out from Rob Kennedy. I mean, that's as good as it gets right there, I think.
You are 100% correct on that. You are 100% correct.
Like, and that's where I was saying earlier, Lamar, like the transition from being a spoiled, entitled college basketball player who had just won multiple conference championships and was in a small town up in outside Albany, New York, and the whole town kind of like praised us when we were at Siena, right? Like, from going from that to the Hoop Group trailer on the top of Hoop Group headquarters gym and having Rob yell at you through the paper thin walls and all that stuff, like, that was tough, man. So, like, I would go in and ask him a million questions. How do you want me to get this done? How should I do this? How should I do that? And it was like, yo, stop asking me all these questions and figure it the F out. And I mean, that's it's pretty good advice right there. So I would say that, because honestly, that, and it wasn't just that. I mean, Rob, I talked to Rob a couple of days ago, and we talked about one conversation in particular that we had while I was there, and how it really just changed my whole mindset on how to work and who I wanted to be professionally and all that stuff. But I think figure it the F out kind of just personifies everything about the Hoop Group and being an employee there.
That definitely will. That definitely is the best advice you definitely get from him. And it's funny you said that. I remember Billy Hahn. I worked with Billy Hahn for almost a year, and he was like, man, I went from the Final Four to sweeping floors or in the gym. Like, you don't realize, like, you work. You know, you work. You like, I was in the Final Four a couple of years ago to sweeping the floor. Like, come on, man. This
Right.
is unbelievable. But yeah, you don't realize that. Like, it will humble you, but it'll make you work hard. You know, you understand what hard work is, and you appreciate it once you leave, because, like you said, it's nothing that you're not gonna do, that you're gonna face that was just as tough as that. You know, so I totally agree with you on that. You know what? You're not a self-promoter. You've never been. You know, like I said, you let your work speak for itself. If you had to choose 3 adjectives, though, to describe yourself, which would you choose?
You know what? I would say thoughtful. I don't think I rush into action. I think I don't think I'm like emotionally charged where I do a good job of keeping my composure and trying to figure out solutions to problems, and then attack them. I would say energetic, because I may not be like the most outgoing energy guy, but I won't stop until we get what we need to done. And if that means I can only sleep 2 hours for the entire week, it's getting done. The job is going to get done. And then I would say just trust. I would say trustworthy, because I think that, like I said earlier, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. If our players need something, I'm going to take care of it. They're not gonna ask me, yo, coach, can we, whatever, can you give me a ride tomorrow? I need to go help my mom with something, whatever. And then the next day comes and I try to duck out, or I don't remember that they had told me that, or whatever. Like, I'm always going to be there for my guys, and I'm never going to, unless, like, I'll never let them down unless it's a complete mistake. And if I made a mistake, I'll go right to them and apologize for that and fix that. So I would say trustworthy.
Awesome, man. What person and or event has had the most influence on your life?
Person is my mom. I mean, obviously she's been there with me for forever. She played college basketball at Pitt. She had a rough college career, the same way I kind of did. And then she was a sideline an announcer, color commentator for ESPN for 17 years, and now she's in the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame in Knoxville, Tennessee. So she's kind of instilled the work ethic, instilled the mental toughness, instilled the high character, the integrity into me from birth, and so I don't think there's anybody who's been there for me like my mom has. The one experience I went through that kind of changed my life was I was in college, and I remember I had another year of eligibility left at Siena, and I chose to hang up the shoes. And you know what? I started praying might sound funny to some people. I literally started praying every single night to try to figure out, what am I going to do with my life? I only ever imagined myself playing basketball. And I think I had been praying for like a week. I didn't previously do that. And I woke up one morning after I was like really struggling with what to do with my career, and should I transfer again? Should I grad transfer? Should I try to play one more year, even though I was going through all these injuries? And I woke up on a weekend morning, and there was an ESPN special on Brett Favre, like finally realizing it was time to retire, and going through all his body issues and injuries and all that stuff, and coming to the realization that it was time for him to retire, and he needs to accept that and move on with his life. And that hit me hard, because I literally was just praying about it before I went to sleep, and as soon as I woke up, that was the message that was right on my TV screen. And so every day since then, every single night since then, I pray before I go to bed, and you know, my faith has kind of has really helped me along the way.
Wow, that's awesome, man. That's actually powerful. Not even just awesome. And I like to end on this question, man, because I mean, you, even though it's interesting, like you were a player, you gave up that year, you work in the hoop group, 7 years coaching now. Like, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your young self or younger self to prepare for as an assistant coach?
You know what, I like, if anything, again, I think I would have told myself something going into the hoop group experience, but I think Rob Kennedy kind of knocked it all out of me by the time I was ready to be an assistant coach. And so, like, there are things that I continue to learn every day, from whether it's from my boss or other people I work with, or from my players. And I would say when I was at the hoop group, I wasn't necessarily open to learning about how the stuff was going to go, or how it all was supposed to go. And I thought, because I was a former player in there, and none of those other guys, Chad Babel, Zach Bovair, those guys weren't players. And so how could they fully know Kevin Driscoll? I mean, Driscoll played at Division III level, but how could those guys fully know what it was like to be a Division I, in a Division I program, you know, and be, and like I said, I think Rob Kennedy kind of knocked the ego out of me right away, to the point where, like, I listened and I learned a lot from all those guys who had been at the hoop group before me, and I continue to learn. And I think from Brett Reed, learned a ton about basketball strategy and X and O. And I mean, he's a genius when it comes to that stuff. Andy Toole is a genius at creating an identity in your program. You know, like, unbelievable on a daily basis with how he wants the program to operate and function, and what he wants the identity to be. And I think Coach Ash at LaSalle is we're building the culture. And I think he had experience doing it at Villanova, and we're in the process of doing it now. And so, I mean, if I were to give advice to anybody getting into our business, I would say swallow your ego, swallow your pride, and learn from everybody, and continue to learn and continue to get better. And like at LaSalle, we talk to our players about getting better every day. But as coaches, we need to continue to get better every day, or else we're not being legit. You know, we're telling them to do something that we're not doing. So that's fraudulent behavior, in my opinion. And I'm not good with that. But I would say that I think that's probably as big of anything. And I think, you know, there's two types of people that are in college coaching. It's the people who worked their butts off and grinded, who weren't former players, whether they were managers or got into it as a GA somehow, and they worked their way up, but they never played the game before. And then there's the former players. And I think each of those categories, there are some stereotypes about those types of people out there in our industry. And I think people need to let go of those and learn from everyone. and just continue to get better every single day.
Great stuff right there. Look, man, I want to thank you again, Kyle, for being a guest on the show and being unmasked. And I always ask people before we go, like, is there anything you want to say to the audience before we go?
All I would say is thank you, Lamar, first of all, for having me on, man. It's great to catch up. Obviously, we're going through difficult times right now, and it's just good to see and be able to connect with people that you know that we typically would in this industry. And so we haven't been able to see each other in person for a while, but it's nice to get together here. I just would urge people to continue to try to stay safe, man. Wear a mask. Let's try to get out of this thing as quickly as we possibly can so we can get back to basketball. I know I'm dying from staying in the house and not being able to work with our guys. And I'm sure there are so many people that feel the same way as me out there. And so I just would urge everybody to wear a mask and stay safe as we're going through this pandemic, and on the topic of the social injustice and unrest that we have in our country. I think as people in sports, we've been exposed to different people, different cultures from an early age. I know I was. I grew up. My neighbors were black, and we played basketball in my backyard every single day. And so I don't. For me, there was never any. It's just like very kind of almost confusing to understand why people would treat other people in a different way. But I do think I just would say that I love what's going on in our country. I love that so many people are speaking out against it, and I'm just trying to continue to educate myself the best I can so I can continue to help our players and use their voices and their platform to eliminate the injustice going on in the country.
Look, you're welcome for coming on. Thank you for those words. It was great seeing and catching up, and thanks for that last bit of knowledge you dropped on us and all the nuggets you dropped throughout the day. I mean, some young guys need to hear some of the things you're saying. Like, even though you're 7 years in the business, like you always talked about learning, I think guys can learn from guys like you. You know, how hard you work, how focused you are, and how driven you are, and how to be successful. So I just want to say that, man. And then at the same time, I want to thank you viewers for watching another great show. Stay tuned for the next guests as we get them unmasked. See you next time, and stay safe.